Hello everyone! Thank you for clicking on my video today. I'm Nikki, I talk about animation, and in this video I am going to try and connect my thoughts on the latest 2 episodes of Helluva Boss, Mastermind and Sinsmas. I'm not planning on doing individual episode reviews, at least not while the show is ongoing. Maybe once the show is over I will do an individual review on each episode to see how they stack up against each other, but that won't be for quite a few years, so let's see if it's still fun making videos by then. Anyway, I wanted to talk about how these 2 episodes have changed the status quo of the series, and go over some theories I have for how the story will develop from now on. All of my theories are based on what we have of the show so far. There's some character analysis and some of it is wide speculation. There is no particular order in this video, and some of these theories may even contradict each other, so just bear with me. This is just a fun little video where I get to talk about my favorite show, so please enjoy. First things first, I said in my big Blitz character analysis video that came out only 5 days before Mastermind, so great timing on that one, that the whole class system in the show was a little bit ambiguous, and it's definitely not anymore. It is clearly a society based on systemic oppression with a ruling class that just completely doesn't give a shit about the lowest class demons to the point that they don't even think of them as people. Truthfully, as frustrating as the whole kangaroo court case was in just how absolutely unfair it was, the absolute absurdity of it is just kind of funny to me. Like, clearly this is the result of allowing Satan, the sin of wrath, to be in charge of the justice system. Mastermind very much hints at the potential of a hellborn rebellion, revolution, resistance of some kind. Considering the story has hierarchy and class difference as a major plot point, it seems like a natural development that the hellborn need better living and working conditions. But the question is whether it will be a gradual change or a full-scale violent revolution. Although seeing as Blitz did not retain his newfound celebrity status in Sinsmas, it could indicate that there needs to be another big event before a demand for social change begins happening. Or perhaps IMP surviving the trial and thus their business became known all over Hell. It inspires several Hellborns to strive for better conditions for themselves, to the point that there aren't enough of them doing the menial labor they are supposed to be doing, so the Sins and the Goetia have to take action and do something about it, which could then lead to a violent confrontation. But there is no doubt in my mind that the system has to change, and I do think that Satan is going to be confronted with the need for this to change. And I guess it's not just Satan, but basically all the Sins, because if they are indeed the creators of the rest of the Hellborn, then they are the ones who made the people that they put into an oppressive system, which is just all kinds of fucked up. And even more so with the cases of Asmodeus and Beelzebub, who are supposed to be the nice Sins, and we're supposed to like them, but they are still participating in upholding this really terrible society. Like, the only reason they speak up for Blitz in the trial is because they know him personally. So if it was anyone else on trial, they would just be, off with his head. Though I do believe that those 2 especially would be more prone to accept change, and maybe help convince Satan that there is room for change. I mean, he can clearly be reasoned with since he accepted Blitz's pleas to not execute Luna and Eminem. And obviously he cares about his own mental health since he has that little therapist Yogurt, so he's trying not to be ruled by his own sin, which is understandable because we see how hot-headed he is, and he is prone to making bad decisions and not really thinking about the wider consequences or the very obvious red flags waving around him. And his emotions are so easily manipulated that both Andrelphus and Stolas use his wrath against him in order to turn the trial in the direction they want it to go. They don't even need real evidence, they just need to say something that will piss him off and he makes a bad decision. I thought he was a fun character, and I'm looking forward to seeing him again. Though of course it's not just the lower class demons who need a change in the system, the royal demons also really need something to change. This is of course most evident with our favorite owl boy, Stolas, who has almost no allies in the royal court, save for maybe Vasago, whom we don't really know anything about. So when Stolas showed up in the courtroom and just spun this tale of his evil plans, no one questioned him and thought it was out of character. These people who have known him his entire life don't know him well enough to see through his lies. I think maybe there's a lack of allyship in general in the royal classes, if anyone really cares about anyone. The clearest example of this is Andrelphus, who is clearly manipulating Stella for his own gains rather than her gains. She doesn't exactly get anything more out of Stolas' banishment in Mastermind than she would have gotten out of Stryker successfully assassinating him. The only one who gained something was Andrelphis, who got to take over Stolas' place. So even though it's not a good situation for him, I'm kind of relieved for Stolas that he got banished and is now in the company of demons who actually care about him, most significantly Blitz, but also Luna and Eminem, because Stolas really needs to be around positive energy towards him and learn to value himself, which he clearly didn't get from the Goetia, but his banishment is only temporary, even if it is 100 years, but he is definitely not going to serve out those 100 years. And I don't really see this series going in the direction of royal bad, so Stolas doesn't want to be a royal anymore and never wants to go back to his old life. Especially since there are also good royal demons whom we're supposed to sympathize with, so I kind of feel like if Stolas just leaves the whole royalty behind, then so should Via and Vasago, and technically so should Beelzebub and Asmodeus and any other potentially nice royals we seem to come across. But then anyone who doesn't want to leave the royal social class behind should be punished, which then wouldn't leave a lot of room for a change in the system when it's kind of based off of these certain demons who have magical powers and therefore seem to sort of be destined to be on top. And I'm kind of expecting sort of a Cinderella-esque ending for Blitz where he wins even bigger than he did in Mastermind, especially because Season 2 has used the palace for a lot of symbolism for the Stolitz ship, with the bedroom, the hallway, and the ballroom. So in the end, the two of them should live at the palace. And the royal demons clearly also serve important purposes for maintaining hell, such as Stolas' annual duty of attending the Harvest Moon Festival to curse the harvest. I don't know how that works, but it seems important. So for the royal class, the most important change would be letting go of their snobbery and beginning to understand the Hellborn demons as equal to them, especially if they want to have a love life with them. And obviously also being kinder to each other. It feels ironic to talk about hell-based demons for this, but it is true. This was actually something I realized when I did my Stolas analysis video. I like all the characters in the show. Some of them I even love. I think all of them are interesting and funny in their own ways. I like the villains because we get evil villains. They're not overly complicated, they're just bad, and I like that. But if there is one character who's kind of low on my list right now, it's Asmodeus. He just gives me nice is different than good vibes. For the most part, he seems perfectly cordial, but at the same time, he's just also been kind of a dick about Blitz and Stolas. In his first appearance, he humiliated them in public, apparently because he has a strange sense of humor. He didn't show any gratitude to Stolas helping him with Fizz's kidnapping. In fact, he complained about his presence. And as sweet and supportive of a boyfriend he is to Fizz, he was also more than willing to enable him if he developed agoraphobia and didn't want to go outside anymore. He chose to call up Blitz to have him come in and try and convince Fizz to quit working for Mammon, which was the best outcome, sure, but still underhanded. And then there is the entire debacle of the court case, where Ozzy does very little to help Blitz. Considering the amount of information he has about Blitz and Stolas' relationship, the fact that he doesn't speak up is just really frustrating. He knows that Andrelphis is bullshitting. He knows that Blitz didn't force himself upon Stolas because Stolas came to him and told him he was having feelings for Blitz, which was why he wanted to give him an Asmodean crystal, which he did give him, making Blitz under Ozzy's jurisdiction, and he just doesn't help him. He really should have called out Andrelphis on these accusations, or he could have supported Vasago when he insisted that Stolas should be at the trial, but he doesn't do either of those things. He waits for Beelzebub to say something, which she only does after Stryker gives his testimony, which is just about the most damning piece of evidence in the case. And from his facial expressions, it appears that he fully believes Stolas' confession to his nonsensical mastermindery. So yeah, I'm a little irked with him, so I'm kind of hoping that Fizz is a little cold to him in their next appearance after he just sat on his hands and was about to let Blitz be executed. And no, I don't believe Satan can punish him. He is literally a sin. It's more likely a keeping up appearances kind of thing. Now, I bring this up not to hate on Ozzy as a character, but because I think it's important to recognize the character we have been presented with, especially after the whole Via debacle. Because prior to Sinsmas, I saw so much chatter about how people were just convinced that Via would do anything to be reunited with her father, that they were just completely ignoring the way the story had established Via and her fears of abandonment. So I'm hoping that with this video, those few of you who watch my channel will not be surprised when Asmodeus returns and is not Stolas' bestie. In fact, the next time they meet, which could potentially be the result of IMP being under the jurisdiction of Ozzy, Ozzy will likely be very distrustful of Stolas. There's also the matter of Mammon's threat to Ozzy about revealing his relationship with Fizz to the public. From Mastermind, it doesn't really seem to be a major issue that the other royals would really care about, seeing as Mammon himself mentions that that everyone knows that Ozzy and Bee are in relationships with plebeians. So I think it's more likely that Mammon will do something that will either hit Ozzy's reputation or maybe hit Fizz's reputation, which could potentially have something to do with the return of Glitz and Glam, who have been confirmed to reappear in the 3rd season. Now let's talk about IMP, because I have quite a few questions about how well the business is really going. Now in season 1 they were doing pretty well, it was easy for clients to find them and they had a lot of clients, but in season 2 the business sort of went up and down, like they had a cash flow issue, business was slow, but then we learned in the full moon that business had hit a peak, but then a little over a month after that Blitz nearly bankrupted the business by spending all of their money. But then by Mastermind they had cleaned up the whole office, so the question is, did they just return all the things he bought and got the money back and restored the pension fund, or what? But in Mastermind they couldn't initially afford new employees, and I don't think those interns ended up with any of the work experience they were after. But then after the trial we saw that Blitz got a lot of emails from people who were both interested in working for IMP as well as new client commissions. But then of course in Sinsmas, about a month after Mastermind, Blitz employs stolitz, so now they seemingly do have enough money for a new employee. Although in this case it could also be that Blitz cannot afford not to hire stolitz, considering he put a roof over his head and is paying for his food and for his clothes, so he might as well put him to work. On the one hand, IMP doesn't seem to have ever been an overly profitable business, considering the state of their office and the fact that Blitz and Luna are living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and most likely so are M&M. But technically, as long as they're just 4 or 5 adults running an independent business, the only thing that really matters is that they can afford an adequate lifestyle. But then adding the fact that Millie is pregnant, their unstable finances are definitely cause for concern, and I imagine that even as happy as Millie was being able to move to Imp City and be part of this first mover business, she probably also hoped for a bit more security and stability so that she could have the future she wanted. I imagine that having a baby would give Millie and Moxie an incentive to participate in demanding better conditions for imps in hell. Also, I am really looking forward to seeing that baby. It would be so cute. Sinsmas also raises a very interesting question in regards to Blitz. Has he grown a conscience when it comes to who he is willing to assassinate? Sure, in this case it is a very unique situation because it hits so close to home. It is almost exactly Blitz and Stolitz's relationship, but if Blitz saw himself in this particular commission, he might also see himself in future commissions. What happens if they get a client who is upset about a family member who cut them off? That would also be a familiar situation to Blitz. And could he really bring himself to kill someone who reminded him of his sister? Or maybe someone who was upset about a friend they became estranged from after an accident? And considering Moxie has always had a conscience and he was the one who encouraged Blitz that it was okay to let go of this one particular target, he might just support Blitz in an inner conflict. And Luna has proven herself completely loyal to Blitz, so she probably won't challenge him. So that leaves Millie as the most finance conscious of the team, and she will not be going on missions the further along she gets in her pregnancy. Although becoming a father could also lead to Moxie having to make some tougher decisions and accept that they actually have to carry out these hits against people he doesn't necessarily think deserve it, so that they can make sure that IMP is financially stable and so that he and Millie have enough money to take care of their baby. The fact that their business is now widely known and they have already refused one commission, there's always the possibility that someone will open a rival company. Something I've also considered. There have been several instances of IMP doing protective work as opposed to assassinations. Most significantly, they've had to protect Stolas on numerous occasions: Lululand, the Harvest Moon Festival, Western Energy, Sinsmas. Blitz was also technically bodyguard for Fizz on 2 occasions, and then their little trip to LA to locate Via, also kind of protective work. So are we headed in the direction that IMP will eventually become a bodyguard service as opposed to an assassination business? Or will they simply become more selective in whom they choose to assassinate, potentially going specifically after dangerous people? The murder family was basically a fluke that they turned out to be terrible people, so killing them was completely justified. Then of course there's a case like Lyle Lipton, where yeah, the world is definitely better off without him. Taking out Rolando also saved a lot of lives, but then of course there are other cases like the Spring Breakers. Did they really deserve to die? Did those lumberjacks deserve to die? Counselor Jimmy killed a person, yes, but he was technically just a teenager and he was so easily manipulated by Barbie, so maybe his life could have been turned around with proper guidance and a little punishment. Emberlyn didn't deserve to die. I don't know about Gerardo, but it could be really satisfying if they end up exclusively assassinating all the people we want to get rid of in the world. Like dictators or those really terrible billionaire oligarchs who are ruining the planet. I do really love seeing Stolas working for IMP, because finally we really get to see how growing up as a royal truly shaped the person he became. the way he clings on to this privilege he just doesn't have anymore. I just love to see it. But the working situation is what highlights to me the cruelty of his banishment. Stolas doesn't have a whole lot or basically any options for where he would work in all these 100 years he has been banished, so it is excessively lucky that Blitz is an independent business owner who can hire whomever he wants. However, since we don't know the lifespan of Hellborn, Stolas is looking at the situation where he will only be able to work for IMP for as long as Blitz, Luna, and Eminem are able to run it. Of course, as they get older, they could hire younger assassins while still running the business, maybe eventually giving it over to Eminem's child or if Luna has any children. But no matter what, at some point Stolas will have to find another place to work. He will have to start over more than once during this punishment to cover those 100 years until he can return to the Goetia, which is also not really something to look forward to because the other royals didn't care about him prior to his banishment, so no one is going to care about him when he returns 100 years later, and Blitz might not even be alive by the time Stolas has to return to the Goetia, so he can't even have him as a support for the transition back into his old life. But on the note of immortality versus mortality, I do think that that will also have to be a plot point in the Hellborn Revolution, as this divide doesn't just pertain to the love story between Stolas and Blitz, but also between Ozzy and Fizz and B and Tex. On the one hand, I could see it as this sort of sad romance to it of our love was so precious that it will keep me alive even long after you're gone. But so much of Stolas' character is his introvertedness and the fact that he hasn't really been able to make any connections with anyone around him until Blitz showed up in his life. So I feel like it would be far too sad of an ending for Stolas to have to eventually bury Blitz. Even if for Blitz it wouldn't end with him dying alone as he feared, it would end with him dying surrounded by all of his loved ones after a long and happy life with Stolas. But it's still just a little bit too dark for my taste. Especially because that would leave Stolas and Via to bury Blitz and Luna and Eminem and anyone else who becomes important to them. Or the alternative, which is worse, that Stolas shall give up his immortality so that he can die along with Blitz, which would then leave Via all alone. Which means that all of these trials and tribulations that Stolas and Via will go through before they become reunited won't even feel like Via was rewarded for overcoming them because she just ends up losing her father anyway. Even though Via cutting her father out of her life is one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the entire series, and her song I Will Be Okay is actually the first scene that has managed to make me cry. I look at it from the bright side that the story is basically that relationships and life experiences can be therapeutic and help you overcome a lot of your personal issues. This is what we've seen already happened with Blitz, and Via definitely has a lot to overcome before she can have a happy ending as well. I'm gonna do a character analysis for Via because she is a really interesting character and I have a lot of thoughts about her that I can't fit into this video, but the most important development for her as a character is not that she needs to understand Stolas' perspective and forgive him. Like, I've heard this fan theory that she's going to be forced into an arranged marriage, which first of all I don't buy because I don't think that all of the Goetia are in arranged marriages. And Realphus is most certainly not, but I saw some theories that the threat of an arranged marriage or just an arranged marriage in general would allow Via to understand her father's point of view. But the issue isn't that Via doesn't understand how Stolas felt. She knows he was unhappy. The issue is that she feels like a burden on his life. He was never happy. He had to take antidepressants her entire life, so she feels like he was acting for her, that he was playing the part of her dad even though he didn't actually want to be her dad. And she's not entirely wrong, because if Stolas had gotten to choose his own path in life, she would not have been born. The biggest problem for Via though is not her relationship with her dad, it's her hatred of Blitz. It's perfectly understandable that she hates him, because from her point of view, Blitz was the one who ruined her entire life, but she refuses to really look at him as a person beyond that. She views the two of them in opposition to each other. They are basically playing a game where Stolas is the prize, but only one of them can win. And the truly saddest thing of all is that that is not at all how Blitz views their situation. Blitz has already mentally adopted Via. He already loves her because she is Stolas' daughter and he loves Stolas. And the fantasy scene he had for them as a happy family would actually benefit Via most of all, because she would have two parents who loved her and a sister. When it comes down to it, Via is her father's daughter in every single way, down to the point that she doesn't seem to have any connections with anyone aside from her dad. She doesn't appear to have any friends, she doesn't really seem to have a relationship with her mother or her uncle, so aside from her conversation with Luna in Seeing Stars, she has never connected with anyone aside from her dad. But in order to be reunited with her dad, Via needs to be able to see Blitz as a person and as someone she can be in a family with. And I have an idea for how I could see this developing in the third season. Basically, I think Via is going to run away from Stella and Andrielphis for whatever reason. Maybe she will be engaged against her will, or maybe she just decides to run away because she feels like no one cares about her. And then while she's out on her own, getting a taste of independence, she runs into different characters we've seen throughout the series who can offer her a perspective on her relationship to her dad and to Blitz. Potentially she could meet Fizz, someone whose life turned upside down, but he still managed to make a really good one for himself. She could also meet Verosica, who is basically a lesson in the futility of being stuck in the past. She still has intense feelings for Blitz, maybe some lingering feelings of love that she would never go back to, of course, especially now that he has moved on. But she also tried to take her pain and help other people. There's also Millie's family, where I could imagine that Via had probably attended the Harvest Moon Festival with Stolas at least once, so maybe she went back there, and they relate to her about being separated from a family member, but that doesn't mean that you can't still love them even though you're not living with them. But the character I think would be most interesting for Via to meet would actually be Barbie Wire. Definitely a chaotic pairing, but I could see a scenario wherein Barbie, through whatever she's working on, runs into Via, sort of takes her under her wing, and they bond, and Barbie tells Via the story of her brother and why she doesn't talk to him anymore, and Via comes to sympathize with the brother, and eventually finds out that it's Blitz, and she comes to understand him better. Although I would also really love like an Oops-style episode where Via runs into Blitz, and they have sort of a bonding adventure. It would be in a circumstance where Blitz wouldn't be able to contact Stolas and let him know what was going on, and then through such an adventure, Via would gain an understanding of Blitz, maybe come to appreciate him a little, but she would still run away from him in the end. There's also another something I've considered: the cherubs and the dorks. Now, for one thing, the dorks have a video recording of Stolas' sigil and him using it to summon himself into the human world. And in the full moon, we learn that they have demonic containment cells. So what if they try to use the sigil to summon Stolas? Of course, there's always the potential that he is tied to his sigil whether he has powers or not, so he is the one summoned to the human world and put in a cell. Something Blitz would definitely notice and try to come looking for him, but if he is no longer attached to his sigil, Octavia might be, so she is the one they summon and put into a cell. Stella and Andrielphis would probably notice if she was gone, whether she runs away or if she is taken away. They would probably try to do something about it because they need to have control over her. But this scenario I'm talking about here, I think could be most interesting in relation to Colin the Cherub. He remains the only cherub who appears redeemable and has a chance of getting back into heaven, though he is still a follower. I don't think we should forget that. But what would he do in a scenario where he witnessed a frightened teenage girl being locked up in a cell and begging to be released? Or even in the version of events where it's Stolas they summon and Blitz comes to save him and there's a show of love between them. Could a cherub gain sympathy for the demons? I'm also super excited that we're getting a Stella perspective. I really want to do an analysis of her character. I think I have a pretty good idea of who she is, but I'll be excited to see if I'm right. As of right now, I'm not overly concerned that she has any terrible plans for Octavia. As far as I view her character, Stella is aware of her role within the Goetia family. She was meant to be Stolas' wife and the mother of his child, and she held on to this status even though she really hated being married to Stolas, as we can see from her not yet divorced party, which is a snide remark that she really would have divorced him if it wouldn't have been a detriment to her own status. But then once he began a very public affair with an imp and declared his intentions to divorce her, he was no longer valuable to her and she would be better off as his widow than as his ex-wife. But now that she is his ex-wife, her status comes from being the mother of Octavia, who is still placed higher than Andrielphis, who is only a marquis. And just being the sister of a marquis is not particularly remarkable. I also just want to appreciate the fact that Stella was sitting on knowledge of Stolas and Blitz's affair for the grimoire, and she just didn't say anything until the whole thing imploded. So if the two of them had just communicated properly, they would have never had to deal with the consequences of the illegalities they were committing. Truly poetic idiocy for my favorite boys. Although Stella's overall incompetence will most likely come back to bite her in the butt because Andrielphis is clearly annoyed with her, and I would not put it past him to actively betray his sister. I'm hoping they're gonna use Andrielphis to explore the magic of the Ars Goetia some more, the duties and the legions and all that, or at the very least I want to see him do some geometry like his namesake. But for Stella and Andrelphus, I hope that their ultimate punishment will be that they get banished as opposed to just being killed. There's just more poetic justice in them having to live amongst the people they have always looked down on. Moving on, it's time to talk about my favorite ship. Obviously, as a massive Stolitz fangirl, these 2 last episodes have just really been good for my soul. There were so many sweet moments. It got so sappy. For the first 18 episodes of the series, they were very down to earth. Sure, the emotions were high, but it feels as if this upgrade in animation has also just cranked the romance levels up to 11, which makes me very happy. But I really have to give it to the SpindleHorse crew that I was totally expecting that season 2 would just end with Blitz and Stolitz confirmed as a couple who want to be together, and then season 3 was going to focus on how they were in over their heads with this relationship because both of them are inexperienced. But I really love that we get the ship sailing again, only for it to enter like Bermuda Triangle levels of dangerous waters. Blitz, of course, is completely in this relationship. He is in love, he knows that Stolitz loves him, because obviously, and he has clearly demonstrated that he feels the same way, so I don't think that Stolitz doesn't believe that Blitz loves him. The issue, of course, is that because of the whole Via situation, Stolitz feels so guilty for how he destroyed his family and his daughter's life that he doesn't feel like he deserves to be with Blitz, to the point that he actively regrets their entire relationship because it's what led to these consequences, which has to make it really difficult to see Blitz be this perfect boyfriend that Stolitz always kind of knew he could be and really wanted him to be, and then not feeling like he deserves to be with him at all. So season 3 is most likely going to see Stolitz coming to terms with his circumstances and learning to accept them while also learning to enjoy life more. Blitz will probably have to teach him some skills about regular life. Maybe he'll teach him how to cook, how to clean, how to keep house and everything. And working at IMP and getting to know Luna and Eminem will probably also help him sort of break out of his shell. I wonder if the happy pills really were mostly just the plot device of sort of demonstrating to us just how depressed he was, that he had become so dependent on this fake happiness, and now he has to learn to be without it and learn real happiness. Though in real life, you're not supposed to just stop taking antidepressants from one day to the next. You're supposed to decrease your dosage over a longer period of time until you can just stop taking them, but we probably shouldn't dwell on that. I also wonder if Blitz could in any way relapse back to his old defense mechanisms, if he feels as if Stolitz is being too distant from him, if he's gonna close off again, or if something could happen between them that would make Blitz unsure about their relationship. Let's also just talk about their power dynamic, because I see a lot of people sort of claim that the power dynamic is now reversed than it was previously, but that's not exactly it. Their old power imbalance through the Grimoire was that Stolitz had the power to simply reclaim his book, which would shut down IMP. However, Blitz, Luna, and Eminem know how things work in the regular world. They know how to work, they know how to do basic skills, they know how to network, they know how to start and run their own business. So at worst, if they lost the Grimoire, they would have to shut down IMP as it was in the Pride Ring, probably move back to the Greed Ring, but they would have been able to recover. The power imbalance now is that Stolitz has lost absolutely everything he ever knew. He doesn't have any skills whatsoever. He doesn't have a network outside of Blitz. And even if he had allies amongst the royals, he's not actually allowed to seek them out as part of his punishment. Furthermore, he is the single most hated demon in all of Hell, which makes him an active target for harassment. Then we can add to that the Stolitz has absolutely no self-preservation because he doesn't really care whether he lives or dies. All of this makes him completely dependent on Blitz's generosity towards him, which means that if Blitz ever gets sick of taking care of him, Stolitz is fucked. But he wouldn't even care. But even though Blitz is acting out of love for Stolitz, this living situation also plays into his obsessive need to be useful to someone. He doesn't have a lot to give, but he is willing to give Stolitz anything he can give him, which is sweet, but may or may not be healthy. It's also ironic that in the full moon, Blitz berated Stolitz for treating him like one of his little butler imps, yet in a lot of ways, Blitz's boyfriend mode is kinda butlery. But he also does a really good job of taking care of Stolitz. I appreciate the way that Blitz guides Stolitz through this new life of his, always holding him by the hand and not really asking him what he wants to do so much as telling him what he should do. Most likely if Stolitz had it his way, he would just sit around feeling sorry for himself, so Blitz is doing a really good job here. The great thing about their relationship now is that it's no longer strictly physical. But because this is Helluva Boss, I predict that in season 3, Blitz will struggle because he is horny, but he feels too self-conscious asking Stolas for sex after everything that happened in the full moon and apology tour, and because he doesn't want to put pressure on him. He is a perfect gentleman in Sinsmas, and I love that so much about him. He is all in on this relationship, but at the same time he shows so much respect. The way he lights up when Stolas kisses him, he so clearly wanted a kiss, but he knew not to take it, and their dance is so perfect. Let's making up for his major mistakes in their not breakup. When Stolas tells him to go join the rest of the party, he says, "You don't have to stay here with me," which is what he said to him in the full moon, although the contexts are different, because in the full moon it meant you don't have to stay with me if you don't want to stay with me, whereas in Sinsmas it means you don't have to stay with me if there are other people you would rather be with. And Blitz's smirk indicates that he remembers what followed this was, "I want you to stay here with me because you want to." And then he takes a page from Better Than Blitz guy, who obviously perpetrated false advertisement by the way, and dances with Stolas, and it is so sweet. I love them so much. I definitely feel that the living situation offers a very interesting way for their relationship to develop, because there could be a lot of problems attached to it, although it is probably the only thing that could actually move their relationship forward after everything they previously went through. Obviously, if they had reconnected under less dramatic circumstances, they definitely would have wanted to get together in an official way, but I don't think they could have managed actually dating each other, because they still had the whole class divide between them, and it's unlikely that Blitz could accurately articulate how this made him feel. Stolas also needed for his life to be sort of shaken up, living at the palace with Via only being there half the time, and then attempting to date Blitz and not having anyone in his own support network. It would likely crash and burn. One thing that will probably happen because of this living situation is that Luna will most likely want to move out of the apartment. I could see this situation where both Luna and Stolas think that they should move out because the apartment is too crowded, and Blitz doesn't want either one of them to leave, but then in the end he has to concede that Luna is an adult, and so he lets her move out, which could then inadvertently have consequences for Blitz and Stolas' relationship, because they would then actually be living together as a couple without Luna as the buffer. But for Blitz and Luna's relationship, it would be interesting to see how they handle still being a family when they don't live together anymore. Perhaps I'm just wearing my doomsday goggles, but there are a lot of things that are still up in the air for Blitz and Stolas. It's great that they are so in love with each other and that they have proven they will do anything for one another, but at the same time there are also so many things they have just never talked about. They briefly touch on their previous sexual relationship, but they have never really had a proper conversation about their transaction. Stolas acknowledged that it was wrong in the full moon, but Blitz never got to give his 2 cents on the matter, if it was really a problem for him or not. In Sinsmas, Stolas also acknowledges Blitz's habit of stealing from him, which is the very thing that led to them meeting and beginning their affair, which mires the memories of the first 2 times they met. They also never talked about what happened at Ozzy's, and then there's the whole fallout and apology tour, not to mention that Stolas might have slept with Better Than Blitz guy, which is something that could hurt Blitz's feelings if he ever finds out. It's also possible that the 2 of them agree that they now have a clean slate, and that anything that happened before Mastermind is in the past and they can't hold it against each other, although I would personally be disappointed if that were the case. The latter half of Season 2 did a pretty good job of tying back to Season 1, so hopefully they continue to do that and continue to acknowledge that there are things in the past for these characters that they need to deal with. Something that could also cause problems for their relationship further down the line is that Stolas will most likely be pardoned from his punishment, meaning he would get to or have to go back to his old life. As much as it's a good break for him to be away from the Gorisha and get a reality check by seeing how the other half lives, and get a taste of what this life he has romanticized really is like, I imagine he would still miss aspects of his old life. It wasn't all doom and gloom. He definitely enjoyed studying, he enjoyed using his magic and tending to his plants and all that. As of right now, he is resigned to his banishment. He seems to be aware that Andrielphis plotted against him and is the one who caused him to lose everything, but at the same time, he also did something illegal, so therefore he should be punished. The situation seems unfair because he was about to lay down his life to save Blitz, but technically by allowing IMP to use the grimoire, he did something illegal, which he has mentioned several times through the show. And I hope that even though he will most likely be exonerated for the crime he confessed to, which he didn't commit, the reality of allowing Blitz to use the grimoire will still come back to haunt him in some other way. I think it would also be kind of fair for Blitz to potentially be punished for this as well. It just feels like they got off a little easy. From Sinsmas, it seems that Stolas would definitely return to his royal life if he was granted the opportunity, so that he could go back and reunite with Via and not have to be poor anymore. But the longer he spends in the regular world and with Blitz, he might come to enjoy himself so much that he doesn't really want to go back, so there's always the possibility that he might be forced to go back. Even though Andrielphus wanted his legions and duties and the power that came with it, he might not be able to handle the responsibility of them. Also, with Satan seeming like a bit of a scatterbrain, it's not impossible he just pardons him because he can't tell what 100 years feels like anymore. That would be so ironic. This also opens the door for more of a star-crossed lovers romance, where the Goetia might keep Stolas on a bit of a short leash after everything he's been doing with Blitz. So part of the societal change would be breaking down the barriers that would keep our favorite Goetic prince and our favorite imp from being together. But in order to make changes in the class system, Stolas will be a lot more valuable back with the Goetia than he is just being on the side of the Hellborn. But I believe that no matter how Stolas gets his position back, it will be thanks to Vasago. Now, I already decided that I was going to love Vasago, and I do. He earned it. Though, perfect honesty, the reason they teased him so heavily in promotional material was clearly because his introduction is weird. Mastermind treats him as if we already know him. We get a lot of shots of him and his reactions to the whole court proceedings, but since this is his debut, it's hard to tell why he reacts the way he does. The show has never mentioned him prior to Mastermind, so I can't even analyze his character. For this reason, I also hope that he appears in the first episode of Season 3, because he needs to make his reappearance very quickly. But based on the info that we have, such as that he is a very good boy, and within Mastermind we can see that he definitely has a very strong sense of justice. He strongly dislikes Andrielphus, frowning as soon as he steps forward on the opposite balcony. Fingers crossed for the lovers to enemies theories I've seen floating around out there. It kind of fits. In contrast though, Vasago clearly likes Stolas, though I'm uncertain if Stolas likes him. Like, this is Stolas' reaction to Vasago cheering for him to sing. He just looks confused. So is it surprise that somebody wants to hear him sing, or is it specifically something about Vasago? So their relationship seems somewhat uneven, but Vasago clearly looks confused and concerned and sad at Stolas' confession, and I do love his quiet rebellion of not joining in the choir of all the other Goetia when Satan starts singing. He's clearly upset, and I do think that he believes that what Stolas is saying is kind of true, even though it's definitely also disbelief. I really hope that they're brothers. I feel like they look just similar enough to be, and it would kind of explain a relationship between the two of them, wherein Vasago is the younger brother who's always looked up to Stolas, but they weren't raised as brothers. I'm just crossing my fingers for a platonic relationship between the two of them of any kind, because Stolas definitely needs his own support network. I had really hoped that he would have made friends with Verosica, but I don't think that happened. But I don't think we should count her out as an ally to Stolas, because she does know that there were feelings between him and Blitz, and probably can figure out that there still are. Although I think him bonding with Vasago would be more interesting, considering they are both Goetia, so them becoming friends, or if they are brothers, it would be nice and wholesome to see a platonic relationship between them. And though this is technically because of the shipping in the fandom community, I have this knot in my stomach. I really don't want Vasago to be wasted in a completely unnecessary love triangle with Stolas and Blitz. This is clearly their love story, so there is no point in having Vasago basically be Team Jacob. But what I do see for Vasago is that based on the lore of his namesake from the Lesser Key of Solomon, Prince Vasago is a good-natured demon who will help those who summon him locate lost items. So he is kind of a detective. And because the whole trial was a real mess, and it was technically recorded, I could see Vasago noticing the very obvious holes in the whole trial he witnessed. The very suspicious nature of how Andrielphus, whom Vasago already doesn't like, made the accusations that Blitz was a violent aggressor towards Stolas and attempted to have him assassinated even though he is himself an assassin. Yet Stolas swooped into the courtroom and spun a very different story, making it very clear that he wasn't a victim, and then Andrielphus, who had first claimed that he was trying to protect Stolas because he loved him so much, ended up being the one who suggested that Stolas should be banished, then gained all of his possessions, and then celebrated said banishment. That is very suspicious. Though, of course, the real challenge is, would he be able to find any evidence to prove Stolas' innocence from what he actually confessed to? And the even bigger challenge is that the lie is only slightly worse than the truth. Either Stolas set up some evil scheme and manipulated a group of imps to go to the human world for reasons that are not specified in his confession, or he simply allowed Blitz to use his all-powerful grimoire because of a mixture of love and lust for him. Either way, it doesn't look good. I hope that the show uses Visago to explore the Gorisha family from a more positive lens than the one we've gotten from Stolas. I assume he's both more of an extroverted character, so he might have an easier time navigating relationships and making allies. Maybe he finds evidence against Andrelphis, so he goes around the other Gorisha to try and drum up support to give Stolas his position back. Although he'll probably need an incentive to begin his investigation, a trigger that tells him that something isn't quite right. Alright, so I think I should throw out some theories on the miscellaneous characters. Crimson wanting to get a hold of Millie and Moxie's baby seems very likely, considering the Mafia has this thing about bloodlines. Most likely he would go for kidnapping rather than attempting to manipulate them into letting him have a relationship with his grandchild. A direct threat to his child would probably be the straw that breaks the camel's back for Moxie and makes him finally snap at his father. With the potential of a revolution, Stryker will definitely also become a more interesting character. He has a bone to pick with the hierarchy, but at the same time he is also clearly a hypocrite who believes himself to be better than other imps. So he's not a revolutionary who wishes the best for his entire species, he only wants what's best for him. And he will no doubt continue to cooperate with Stella and Andrielphis, who still have good reason to want Stolas dead so that he can't come back to his position. Or as long as he still has blessed weaponry and a direct bone to pick with Blitz, he could just choose to go after Blitz's boyfriend on his own. This is probably unlikely, but I think it would be interesting if Stryker was killed off in season 3. He's currently the antagonist who's had the most appearances in the show, but he's always working for or with someone else, and he stands as a direct foil to Blitz, Stolas, and Moxie, who each would have a pretty good reason to be the one to finally kill him. Either way, he probably will be dead by the end of the series. Alright, so I think I'm gonna wrap this video up here. Thank you so much for watching. You might be able to tell that I've changed up the contents of this video quite a bit. I've been working on it for a while, trying to compose my thoughts. I have quite a few plans for videos I want to make talking about other shows. I really hope you will be watching, and of course I will continue to make videos on Helluva Boss. I will do more character deep dives if I can find anything to talk about or any other analysis. Maybe if you have some ideas, comment them below. But either way, I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Once again, thank you and have a great day. Bye!